I got the email while eating cold rations under a corrugated tin roof in eastern Syria. Dust coated everything: the food, the air, the inside of my lungs. My name is Adam Brooks, 38 years old, Staff Sergeant with the 3rd Infantry Division. I'd been deployed for just under 5 months when military police sent word through encrypted email that I was under investigation for domestic abuse. The subject line was sterile, pending allegations, immediate review required. But the content hit like a backblast. My wife Claire had filed a formal report. She claimed I'd hit her, that I'd threatened her life, that she lived in fear of me returning. The document attached was full of language I'd never seen before. Coercive control, emotional violence, repeated intimidation. The kind of terms that sound clinical until they're being used to define your marriage. I read it 3 times, slowly. Then closed my laptop and stared at the wall for a long time. Wilson, one of the guys in my unit, nudged me with his elbow. "Bad news from home?" I nodded but didn't say more. In our world, you learn quickly who to talk to and when to keep things locked down. Here's the thing. I never laid a hand on Claire. Never even raised my voice above the line of reason. She was my wife, my partner. At least I thought so. Sure, we had rough patches, but who doesn't? I sent flowers on her birthday. Took leave to surprise her on our anniversary. When her mom got sick, I used half my deployment savings to help with hospice care. And now I was reading that I'd been violent, dangerous, that I was being flagged for administrative hold. My clearance wasn't suspended yet, but I knew how fast these things moved. There wasn't panic, just a slow, cold current settling in my chest. Something deeper than shock, something like betrayal. I typed a short reply back to the MP liaison, acknowledged receipt, request details and next steps. Then I logged off, slipped my wedding ring into my pocket, and got ready for patrol. My hands were steady, my breath even, but something inside me had just been rewritten, and I wasn't sure yet what kind of man that made me. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue in Tacoma. Claire had a camera slung over one shoulder, soft curls falling into her eyes as she laughed at something I'd already forgotten. She was bright, curious, the kind of person who read the plaques in museums and actually remembered them. I was fresh off my 2nd tour in Afghanistan, not looking for anything serious, but something about her felt still, like peace I could reach for. We got married 11 months later. The first couple years were good, better than good. We made Sunday pancakes a tradition, took road trips with no plans. She'd leave notes in my rucksack before deployments. "Come home to me," written in tiny script. I kept everyone in a locked box under my bunk. But things changed. Slowly at first. Like a faucet dripping just once every minute, then twice, then steady. After 3 failed rounds of IVF, Claire withdrew. The warmth stayed in her eyes, but her voice got quieter. She started staying late at work, stopped texting me goodnight. At first, I told myself it was grief. We both wanted kids, and the silence of that hope dying between us was a sound I still don't know how to describe. Then came the financial stress. She picked up a 2nd job without telling me, claimed it was freelance design work. Our bank account started shrinking, line by line, and every time I brought it up, she waved it off. "You wouldn't get it, Adam," she'd say. "You're not the one holding things together here." That cut more than she knew. I started noticing passwords changed, her phone always on silent, a new perfume scent that didn't match anything I'd seen on her dresser. I asked her once, just once, if something was going on. She stared at me so cold, I thought I'd imagined the woman I married. "Don't accuse me of things you don't understand," she said, then walked upstairs like she'd just finished a business meeting. I chalked it all up to distance. Deployment was hard on people. I thought maybe when I got back, we'd fix it, reconnect, get therapy if we had to. It never crossed my mind that Claire would try to erase me another way entirely. I never imagined she'd try to bury me while I was still at war. The next morning, my CO pulled me aside after morning briefing. Short conversation. No emotion. Just protocol. "You're under formal administrative review, Staff Sergeant Brooks. Until further notice, communication access is restricted. No direct contact with your wife. No unsecured messaging. Everything goes through the liaison." I nodded. Understood. Inside, something shifted. Not snapped. Just quietly tilted out of place. It was like a wall going up around me, and nobody else even saw it. I turned in my personal phone, got flagged on the base comms list. They let me keep access to official systems, but my inbox was filtered. No social media, no Skype. My wife had accused me of abuse, and now I was the one being monitored like a threat. That afternoon, I sat on the cot in our shared quarters, staring at the folded note Claire had written before my last deployment. "Come home to me." I didn't even know what that meant anymore. Word spread fast. You can't keep things like this quiet in a unit. Soldiers notice shifts, tension, silence. Some guys checked in. Wilson left a protein bar on my bed, didn't say anything. Jenkins cracked a joke like nothing happened, then invited me to lift after hours. I appreciated both, but others pulled away. I'd walk into the mess hall, and conversations would dip, not stop, just flatten out. Like people were switching topics in their heads. One guy asked flat out, "Did you hit her, man?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew anything I said could end up somewhere official. So I said nothing. Just kept my head down and did my job. It's strange. What starts to fade when you can't speak for yourself? You lose ground without realizing it. People start filling in blanks you don't get to correct. You become the guy who might have, instead of the man you've always been. And I couldn't fix it. Not yet. Not with words, anyway. So I watched, waited, took notes in my head, and held on to one truth like a lifeline. I'd never laid a hand on her. Not once. Not ever. Even if the world started believing otherwise. Looking back, the signs were there. Not loud, not dramatic, just small cracks that only make sense once the wall's already fallen. 3 months before deployment, Claire refused counseling. We'd been dancing around the idea for a while. I brought it up after another long silence stretched across dinner one night. "I think we need help," I said, careful not to sound accusing. She didn't even look up from her pasta. "I don't want to rehash everything with some stranger. We're fine." But we weren't. We hadn't been for a while. She started volunteering at a local women's shelter around the same time. I thought it was a good thing, something meaningful. Claire always had a strong sense of justice, but soon it became an obsession. She talked less and less about us and more about what those women were going through. They trusted the wrong people, she'd say. They ignored the red flags. I didn't ask if she was talking about them or about me. Physical distance followed. Claire pulled away from touch like it burned. She used to curl into me like she belonged there. Now she'd flinch at the smallest contact, blame stress, hormones, sleep, always something else. I tried not to push. Military life teaches you patience. But even patience has an edge, and I was starting to feel it slice through what little connection we had left. Then there was the neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, older lady 2 doors down. She texted me one afternoon while I was at the base. "Everything okay over there?" Claire seemed upset earlier. I showed Claire the message that night. She laughed, not kindly, more like someone who'd caught you snooping. "She needs to mind her own business," she said, then changed the subject. I brushed it off. Didn't want to start a fight. Didn't want to believe something worse might be brewing beneath the surface. But I think about that message now. A stranger saw something I didn't want to see, and I ignored it. Pretended the house wasn't burning just because I didn't smell the smoke yet. That was my mistake, and now I'm the one choking on the ash. The Army teaches you to know your assets, when to use them, who to call when the ground starts shifting under your feet. I called Chris Tate. We served together during my first deployment. He went the legal route after getting out. JAG officer now, stationed in Virginia. Smart guy, quiet. The kind of man who doesn't say much unless it matters. I sent a single message through a secure line. "Need your eyes on something. Personal, confidential." He replied inside 10 minutes. "Call me tonight, 2100, scrubbed line." When we finally spoke, I gave him the outline. The charges, the restrictions, the complete absence of logic. He didn't react, not outwardly, but I could hear him flipping pages as I talked, already working the angles. "She claimed this happened before or after you deployed?" he asked. "Night before I left," I said. "She told the court I got physical, threatened her. Said she didn't report it right away because she was afraid." Chris went quiet for a second. Then, "I'm going to pull the public records. Give me 48 hours. 2 days later, he called back, voice clipped but urgent. "Adam, the filing date was after your departure." "What?" "She submitted the report 5 days after your boots were on foreign soil. But she says it happened before you left, which means either she waited nearly a week to report a violent assault, or it didn't happen." Exactly. There was more. Claire's statement was full of vague phrases, general descriptions, no hospital visit, no bruises documented, no police call, just her word and the weight of it. But that red flag, that filing date, that was leverage. "Start compiling everything," Chris said. "Emails, texts, deployment orders, time-stamped anything. You're going to need it." I felt something settle in my chest. Not relief, just clarity. She'd expected me to be too far away, too tied up, too distracted to push back. But she forgot who I am. I'm not built to surrender. I don't yell. I don't run. I get methodical. Now I had someone in my corner, and a loophole that might just crack this wide open. 2 weeks into the investigation, I got limited access to social media. Not much, just a scrubbed connection through the base's legal liaison, strict parameters, monitored logins. I wasn't supposed to contact Claire. I didn't. But I looked. What I found hit harder than I expected. Claire had changed her profile photo, beach sunset, hair down, drink in hand. Next to her, a man I'd never seen before. Tall, trim beard, arm casually draped across her shoulder like he'd always belonged there. The caption was simple. New beginnings. Posted 3 days after I got pulled from comms. I sat back from the screen, breathing slow. Not because I was surprised. Somewhere in my gut, I'd already known. But seeing it? That was different. Visuals make things real. Photos cut through the noise. She'd moved on, and not quietly. She wanted people to see it. The world, our friends, maybe even me. So I started documenting, screenshots, dates, times, captions. Every post became a puzzle piece. Every tag, a breadcrumb. Then I started building a timeline. Deployment orders issued March 3rd. I left March 18th. Allegations filed March 23rd. Vacation photos posted March 26th. The man in the pictures? Same one tagged in a brunch post 2 months earlier. Back then, he was just a friend. Or so she'd said. It wasn't about jealousy. Not anymore. It was about the pattern, the sequence, the setup. She didn't just fall into someone else's arms after things got hard. She planned this, calculated every step. She told a court I was dangerous while sipping cocktails with a man wearing my sunglasses in a resort I paid for. There's a different kind of rage that comes with being framed by someone you once promised to protect. But I didn't act on that rage. I opened a clean folder on my drive and titled it, Claire, Truth. Then I got to work. It started with a ping from Chris. Short message. You're going to want to see this. Attached were court filings and bank activity logs, all time-stamped, all cleanly executed, all damning. Within 48 hours of filing the abuse allegations, Claire had applied for a temporary restraining order, filed for divorce, and drained our joint checking account. Every last cent, $62,140.73, gone. Transferred to a personal account I'd never seen before. She didn't even try to space it out, just wiped it clean. 2 days later, she moved him in. Same guy from the photos. His name showed up on a utility transfer, new service at our house, billed to him directly. She didn't just bring him into our bed. She gave him our Wi-Fi password, my dog, my damn parking space. And that's when the last illusion died. This wasn't a meltdown, wasn't grief, wasn't someone unraveling under emotional strain. This was planned, precise, executed like a mission. She'd waited until I was too far to fight back, made sure the allegations landed when I couldn't walk into a courtroom or call a local attorney. She built her case like a blueprint and made me the villain in a story I never got to read until it was already published. I thought about the night I left, how she kissed me like nothing was wrong. Come home safe, she whispered, her arms around my neck. Then turned around and dismantled everything we'd built before my boots even touched the sand. Chris called later that day. You okay? Not really, I said, but I'm getting there. Because now the illusion was gone. No more hoping this was some mistake or emotional spiral. No more trying to rationalize betrayal. Now it was facts. Cold, hard, and perfectly organized. And once you see things clearly, really clearly, you stop bleeding. You start building. I told Chris, we need evidence, proof, something she can't talk her way around. He paused. You said once you had cameras at the house? Yeah, I said slowly, mind already turning. Yeah, I do. I'd installed the system after a break-in 2 years back. Just a couple of indoor cams, one in the living room, another in the hallway near the front door. Basic motion detection, Night vision, all of it uploaded to a private cloud account I hadn't logged into in months. I'd almost forgotten they existed, until that call with Chris. He leaned in. If she says something happened in the house that didn't, maybe those cameras caught it. I pulled out my old login. Password still worked. I gave Chris access through a secure share link, told him to look for footage from March 17th, the night she claimed everything happened. I didn't watch it myself. I couldn't. He called back the next day. "You're going to want to hear this," he said. And I could tell from his tone he wasn't angry. He was focused. "Adam," he said, "the house was empty." "What?" I went through 6 hours of footage from that day. No sign of her. She doesn't walk in, doesn't walk out. Lights stay off. No movement, no voices. Living room is empty all night. "She said it happened the night before I deployed," I said. "I know, and she wasn't even home." He sent me the stills, time-stamped, clean. The camera caught daylight fading through the curtains, the clock on the microwave ticking into night, and nothing else. No shadows, no screaming, just silence. "I've got the metadata logged," he added. "Court admissible. Chain of custody secure." I sat with that for a while, watching the still images on my screen. The place I'd called home, quiet and untouched, while a report back home painted me as a monster in that very space. It was all a lie. Not just a misunderstanding, a fabrication. She hadn't panicked. She'd plotted. And she'd counted on me not having access, not having proof, not having anything except my word against hers. But I had cameras. I had backup logs. And now I had a trail. And somewhere in that digital trail, her whole story was about to collapse. It started with a hunch. The footage proved Claire lied about that night, but something still didn't sit right. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It felt rehearsed, like she'd done it before. So I asked Chris to dig. Nothing illegal, just public records, old court filings, restraining orders, anything tied to her name before we met. Took him a couple days. Then he called me, voice low and deliberate. "Adam, there's a history." I didn't say anything, just waited. Claire was engaged once before. Guy named Thomas Grady, back in 2012. They were 6 months out from the wedding when she accused him of controlling behavior, emotional abuse, gaslighting. I leaned forward. Did it go anywhere? No charges, no police report, just accusations. She broke off the engagement, filed a restraining order request, but it was denied for lack of evidence. My stomach turned. "That's not all," Chris continued. "There are 2 other filings from her 20s, both ex-boyfriends, same playbook. Accusations of emotional or verbal abuse, restraining order requests, both tossed by judges. No patterns of violence, no witnesses, no evidence. How many people know about this?" He paused. "Not many. Each case is buried in different counties. You wouldn't know unless you were looking." But we were. I sat in silence after that call, letting the puzzle lock into place. Claire wasn't reacting out of fear or desperation. She was using a system she knew could be manipulated. Accusation first, sympathy second, control third. She didn't need to prove anything. Just plant the seed. And it worked. Over and over again. But not this time. Not with me. I wasn't her ex's. I had documentation, witnesses, footage, a deployment alibi. And now, a map of her history that pointed to a long-standing pattern of fabrication. She'd sharpened her tools over years, and this time, she used them on a soldier with nothing left to lose. By the end of the week, the tone on base had changed. Military legal had received Chris's documentation, deployment logs, the camera footage, Claire's public record trail, and the metadata on her court filings. It was airtight, uncomfortable even. The kind of truth that doesn't make noise. It just rearranges the room. They didn't drop the investigation outright. That's not how the system works. But they paused all punitive action. No administrative separation. No formal Article 15. Just a temporary freeze on any further proceedings until the civilian court hearing played out. It was something. A start. When I got the news, I didn't feel relief. Not really. Just space. Like someone finally stopped pushing down on my chest long enough for me to breathe. Chris didn't waste time. He filed a counter-motion in Washington's Superior Court that afternoon. Request for emergency evidentiary hearing. Included a full packet of our findings, camera footage, Claire's inconsistent timeline, and prior court filings. He marked it urgent. The judge agreed. Hearing date was set 2 weeks out. Claire's attorney, some boutique family law type with a perfect Instagram smile, filed an objection, claiming the footage was taken without consent. It didn't hold. The cameras were legal, installed by me, in a shared home, with Claire's prior knowledge. She'd even helped set up the app once when I was away. Chris just smiled. They're scrambling. Good. Let them scramble. Let her explain how she claimed to be in a house she never entered. Let her walk a judge through her history of accusations, none of which ever stuck. Let her try to spin a new narrative while the evidence laid itself out in sequence, clean and surgical. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about setting fire to the lie she built and walking away while it burned behind me. Because when someone rewrites your story, you don't beg for the pen back. You take it and you write the truth louder. They put me in cuffs on the tarmac. Didn't matter that my record was clean. Didn't matter that the Army had paused its investigation or that Chris had filed the court motion and backed it with more evidence than most criminal cases ever see. There was still a warrant. Still a name in a system tied to a domestic violence accusation. So they processed me like any other man whose face showed up on a screen next to the word dangerous. 2 MPs met me at the airstrip in Washington. No eye contact. No questions. Just turn around, hands behind your back. I complied without a word. The zip-tie cuffs bit into my wrists as they walked me across the concrete like I was radioactive. At county booking, they took my fingerprints, my mugshot, stripped me of everything except a paper wristband and a hard plastic cot in a cell that smelled like bleach and lost hope. The guy next to me snored through the night. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the absurdity of it all. One lie, one statement, and suddenly I was the threat. Not the man who'd bled and sweated through 20 years of honorable service. By morning, Chris had me out on bond. $25,000 posted by a friend from base. No conditions, just a pending court appearance and a hole in my dignity that was going to take longer to stitch up than any combat wound. Walking out of that building was worse than walking into it. Because on the way in, I had shock, confusion, some shred of how could this happen? On the way out, all I had was clarity. She wanted me erased. Character, history, service, it didn't matter. She wanted the house, the money, the narrative, maybe even pity. And she was willing to ruin me to get it. Well, she'd underestimated the one thing I never left behind: discipline. She started a war. And now I was going to show her what happens when a soldier doesn't stop at defense. He goes on the offensive. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, just in presence. Like the walls were trained to swallow whatever truth might echo inside them. Claire sat across from me at the petitioner's table. Perfect posture, hair curled, hands folded like she was waiting for a PTA meeting to start. Her attorney whispered something, and she nodded, eyes fixed forward. She never looked at me. Chris sat beside me, calm, professional, but I saw the fire behind his eyes. He had the footage cued, the logs printed, exhibits labeled and ready to burn through the paper-thin story Claire had constructed. The judge called it to order. Claire's lawyer went first. She spoke with righteous sympathy, described me as volatile, unpredictable, claimed Claire had feared for her life the night before I deployed. Then Claire took the stand. She delivered her story like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror, said I cornered her in the kitchen, that I screamed, that I grabbed her wrist, said I left the house in a rage and she slept with a knife under her pillow. And then it was our turn. Chris didn't raise his voice. He didn't object theatrically. He just laid it all out. First, the camera footage. March 17th, 6 p.m. to midnight. No one home. Then deployment logs. Boots on a plane by 0400 the next morning. Phone pings. Claire's location across town that entire evening. Then the timeline of withdrawals, the vacation photos, the boyfriend's residency, all within days of the accusation. Then, the final touch. Her previous restraining order requests, denied twice. No findings, no evidence. A pattern of false claims. When it was over, the judge took a long pause, removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose like he'd just read a particularly exhausting chapter of a bad novel. "Ms. Brooks," he said finally, "do you have anything else to add?" Claire looked small then, like she'd shrunk under the weight of her own story. She began, but her voice cracked. "I was scared." "Of what?" the judge asked. She said nothing. The ruling came down hard. Petition for restraining order, denied. Divorce proceedings frozen pending further investigation. And then the real hit. The judge found Claire in contempt of court for perjury, referred the case for possible criminal charges. Her lawyer stood, adjusted his tie, and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to formally request withdrawal as counsel." I didn't smile, but inside I marked the moment. The lies had collapsed, and truth had just taken the stand. The charges were dropped before the end of the week. No press release, no apology. Just a phone call from the DA's office letting me know we will not be pursuing the case at this time. Like they'd simply decided to cancel dinner plans, not rescind an accusation that nearly destroyed my life. Chris followed up with the county clerk to make sure the record would be sealed. It would. The system, at least on paper, was beginning to correct itself. But the real shift came when I got a call from Detective Green with the local PD. "We've opened an investigation into Claire Brooks for falsifying a police report," he said. "We've reviewed the hearing transcript, video evidence, and court findings. Her statements contradict every timestamp and surveillance frame. I asked if I needed to testify. Maybe, down the line. For now, just keep documenting. You've done everything right. That night, I poured myself a whiskey in the same kitchen Claire claimed I'd attacked her in. The countertops were cold, clean, empty now. No framed photo of our wedding. No wine glass on the rack she never used. Just silence. I'd come home to a place that didn't feel like home anymore. As for her boyfriend, he vanished. Quietly. No warning. His truck gone from the driveway. His name removed from the utility bills. A friend of Claire's slipped a detail to Chris. Turns out he had a criminal record, a sealed fraud charge from 2017, and a pending investigation in another state. Like attracts like, I guess. Claire stopped showing up for hearings after that. Her lawyer was gone, and she had no one left to defend the story she built. I heard she moved in with her sister across town, still claiming to be recovering from trauma, still playing the victim in a different chapter of the same tired story. Let her. She'd made her move, and I made mine. The difference was, I had truth on my side. The Army cleared my record 2 weeks after the final court ruling. Formal letter, signed, stamped, filed, all allegations unfounded. No further action recommended. It was the kind of language that looks cold on paper, but feels like oxygen when you've been holding your breath for months. My CO called me into his office personally, handed me the letter without a word, just a nod of respect. He wasn't a man who apologized, but he didn't need to. Sometimes, silence is enough when it's the right kind. Later that week, the guys from my unit threw a small get-together in the back lot behind the barracks. Nothing fancy, just grilled burgers, a few cold ones, and that tight camaraderie that only comes from people who've seen each other at their worst and stayed anyway. Wilson clapped me on the back. "Glad you're still standing, man." "Would have taken more than that to knock me out," I said. But we both knew it had come close. The brass offered me an advancement, platoon sergeant. Bigger role, more responsibility, pay bump. It was a career-defining move. I thanked them and turned it down. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I needed something different now. Not revenge, not control, just space, room to breathe, to figure out who I was outside of uniforms and betrayals. "I need some time," I told them. Not off the grid, just off the line. They respected that. I wasn't walking away angry. I wasn't walking away at all. I was walking forward, finally, without someone else pulling the strings. Some wounds heal slower than others, not because they're deeper, but because they cut through who you thought you were. But I'd survived. Not as a victim, not as a broken man, but as someone who had every reason to fall and still chose to stand. 6 months later, I moved to Montana. No grand send-off, no farewell speech, just loaded up my truck with what was left, gave my keys to the property manager, and pointed the wheel north. Found a cabin outside Kalispell, 2 bedrooms, wood stove, acres of quiet. The kind of place where your lungs remember how to breathe again. There's a creek out back. Moose tracks in the mud some mornings. Locals nod when you pass, but don't ask questions. That suited me fine. I picked up part-time work with a local ROTC program at the high school. Nothing formal, just a few hours a week teaching leadership, discipline, how to tie a proper knot. The kids listened. Some called me sir, even when I told them not to. A few asked about combat. I kept those answers short. I also started volunteering at a nonprofit that helps veterans navigate benefits and reintegration. Paperwork, housing, mental health referrals, quiet work, purposeful. The kind that doesn't make headlines but changes lives one folder at a time. At home, I kept the old hard drive in a fireproof box under the stairs. Court records, video footage, statements, every receipt from the fight I never asked for. I never opened the files, never rewatched the footage. Didn't need to. The truth wasn't on a screen anymore. It was in me. Some nights I'd sit on the porch, Scout curled at my feet, coffee cooling in my hands as the sky faded from gold to deep blue. The silence out here isn't empty. It's earned. It wraps around you like armor. I don't think about Claire much anymore. Not with anger, not with longing. Just as a closed chapter in a book I had to finish reading before I could write the next one. I don't hate her. That would mean I'm still holding something. I'm not. She tried to erase me with a lie, but she forgot. I was built for survival. I didn't fight back with fists or fire. I stood still. I stayed calm. I let the truth rise like it always does. Slow, steady, undeniable. And in the end, that's what saved me. She tried to destroy me with lies. I survived by sticking to the truth. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.